The dust hung thick in the air that September afternoon when Clara Whitfield stepped off the stagecoach in Cedar Ridge, her Eastern dress already coated with the fine red dirt of the frontier. She clutched a worn carpetbag in one hand and steadied herself with the other, her legs unsteady after 3 days of bone-jarring travel from Missouri. "End of the line, miss," the driver called down, spitting tobacco juice into the street. "This here's Cedar Ridge." Clara surveyed the rough collection of wooden buildings that lined the main street. The Golden Dollar Saloon leaned precariously against the general store, while across the way, the sheriff's office stood next to what appeared to be the town's only hotel. Men in worn chaps and dust-covered hats paused to stare at her, their conversations dying mid-sentence. She lifted her chin, ignoring the weight of their gazes. She'd left Philadelphia with its whispers and pointed fingers far behind. Here, she told herself, she could start fresh. Here. No one knew about the scandal that had driven her from her father's house, or the man who'd promised marriage only to abandon her when his wealthy family threatened disinheritance. "You lost lady." A grizzled man missing several teeth grinned at her from the saloon's doorway. "Ain't much call for fancy Eastern ladies in Cedar Ridge." Clara tightened her grip on her bag. "I'm looking for work." The man's laughter was harsh as crow's caw. "Work only work for women here is the kind done upstairs at the Golden Dollar, if you catch my meaning." Heat flooded her cheeks, but before she could respond, a commotion erupted near the hitching post. A magnificent black stallion reared up, his hooves pawing the air as 2 men scrambled backward. "Damn horse near took my head off," one of them shouted. "Should put a bullet in that devil," the other muttered, reaching for his gun. "You pull that iron and you'll be eating lead before you clear leather." The voice was low and steady, cutting through the afternoon heat like a blade. Clara turned to see a tall man emerge from the shadows of the general store's porch. He moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed, his sun-weathered face partially hidden beneath a black hat. The would-be shooter's hand froze. "Jake Sullivan. Didn't know that was your horse." "Now you do." Jake's gray eyes were cold as winter steel. "Touch him again and we'll have words." The 2 men mumbled apologies and hurried away. Jake walked to the stallion, who immediately calmed, nuzzling his master's shoulder. "That's Tempest," the toothless man whispered to Clara. "Meanest horse in 3 territories. Won't let nobody but Jake near him. Kicked a man clean through a barn wall once." Clara watched, fascinated, as the cowboy murmured something to the animal. Despite her exhaustion and uncertainty, she found herself drawn forward. Maybe it was the gentleness hidden beneath the man's rough exterior, or perhaps she simply felt kinship with another creature deemed too wild for polite society. She set down her carpetbag and approached slowly. Jake glanced up, his eyes narrowing. "Ma'am, I'd keep your distance. Tempest don't take kindly to strangers." But even as he spoke, something extraordinary happened. The black stallion, who moments before had been ready to strike down grown men, turned toward Clara. His ears pricked forward, and he took a step in her direction. "Tempest, no," Jake started, but stopped short as his horse lowered his proud head, something the animal had never done for anyone but him. Clara, hardly daring to breathe, extended her hand. Tempest sniffed her fingers, then gently pressed his velvet muzzle into her palm. The street fell silent. Even the saloon's tinny piano stopped playing. Jake stared, his composed mask slipping to reveal pure astonishment. In 8 years of owning Tempest, won in a poker game from a Mexican horse trader who claimed the stallion was cursed, he'd never seen the animal show submission to another's soul. "I'll be damned," someone whispered. Clara stroked the horse's neck, feeling the powerful muscles relax under her touch. "Hello, beautiful," she murmured. "You're not so terrible, are you?" Jake removed his hat, running a hand through dark hair streaked with premature silver. He studied her with those penetrating gray eyes, seeing past the travel-stained dress to something else, a weariness that matched his own. Perhaps or a wildness carefully contained? My horse never bows to anyone, he said slowly. If he did it for you, then this is where you belong. Clara's hand stilled on Tempest's neck. I don't understand. I run a cattle ranch about 5 miles north. Lost my cook last week when he decided to try his luck in the gold fields. Jake settled his hat back on his head. Pays fair, works hard, and my men are rough but decent. You said you're looking for work. I've never cooked for cowboys. Can you cook at all? Clara thought of the elegant dinner parties she'd organized in her father's house, the French chef who'd taught her sauces and soufflés. Not the kind of food you probably need. Can you make biscuits, fry beef brew coffee strong enough to float a horseshoe? I can learn. Jake nodded. Decision made. Then you've got a job if you want it. Room and board included. He glanced at the gathering crowd of onlookers, his expression hardening. And ma'am, my ranch is under my protection. Anyone bothers you answers to me. The toothless man from the saloon hastily backed away, suddenly remembering urgent business elsewhere. Clara looked from Jake to Tempest, who was now contentedly lipping at her sleeve. A cattle ranch 5 miles from town, surrounded by rough men and harder work than she'd ever known. It wasn't what she'd imagined when she'd fled west, but the horse's trust felt like a sign, and the cowboy's offer of protection, not possession. But protection was more honest kindness than she'd received in months. When do we leave? She asked. Something that might have been approval flickered in Jake's eyes. Soon as I finish my business here. Half hour. Maybe. He tilted his head toward the hotel. You might want to change into something more practical. If you've got it, that dress won't last a day where we're going. Clara retrieved her carpet bag, acutely aware of the town's collective gaze following her to the hotel. Behind her, she heard Jake's spurs jingling as he led Tempest to the water trough, and the gradual resumption of normal activity as Cedar Ridge absorbed this unexpected upset to its daily routine. In the hotel's cramped washroom, she changed into her simplest dress, still too fine for ranch work, but it would have to do until she could purchase proper clothing. She splashed water on her face, studying her reflection in the cracked mirror. Green eyes that had once sparkled at Philadelphia soirees now held shadows. Honey-colored hair that had been elegantly styled was pulled back in a simple knot. She looked like what she was, a woman running from something, toward an uncertain future. But for the first time in months, that future held possibility. When she emerged, Jake was waiting with a weathered wagon. He'd tied Tempest to the back, and the stallion nickered softly when he saw her. Jake helped her up to the bench seat, his touch impersonal but steady. Thank you, she said as he climbed up beside her. He glanced at her sidelong. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen the ranch or met my men. Might be you'll be on tomorrow's stage heading back east. I won't be. Jake studied her for a moment, then clicked to the horses. As they rolled out of Cedar Ridge, Clara didn't look back. Behind them, Tempest followed placidly, occasionally stretching his neck forward to lip at her shoulder. The sky stretched endless above them, painted in shades of gold and crimson as the sun sank toward the distant mountains. The road was rough, little more than wagon ruts carved into the prairie. But Clara found the silence comfortable. Jake didn't press her for conversation or explanation, seemingly content to drive while she absorbed this new landscape of sagebrush and vast horizons. Why Tempest? She finally asked. Jake's mouth quirked, not quite a smile, but close. You ever seen a storm build over the mountains? Comes out of nowhere, all thunder and lightning and fury. That's what he was like when I first got him, pure tempest. But not with you. We came to an understanding. Took time, though, and more than a few broken ribs. Clara thought about that, about the patience required to gentle something wild without breaking its spirit. And you've never seen him accept anyone else? Never. Not even my foreman. And Tom's as good with horses as any man alive. Jake's hands were steady on the reins, but she sensed his continued puzzlement. Don't suppose you'd care to explain it? I wouldn't know how. He nodded, accepting this. As they crested a rise, the Circle S ranch spread out before them, a collection of log buildings nestled in a valley, with cattle dotting the surrounding grasslands like scattered coins. Home, Jake said simply. Clara studied what would be her new world, the main house with its wide porch, the bunkhouse where she'd soon be cooking, the barns and corrals. It was rough and isolated, a far cry from Philadelphia's manicured streets. But as Tempest nudged her shoulder again, whickering softly, she felt something ease in her chest. Perhaps some people were meant for ballrooms and social calls, but looking at this wild, honest landscape, Clara thought maybe she'd been meant for this all along. She just hadn't known it until a horse and the man who rode him showed her where she belonged. Clara woke before dawn on her first morning at the Circle S ranch, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar sounds, cattle lowing in the distance, a rooster's crow, the creak of the wooden walls as they settled in the cool morning air. Her small room off the kitchen was sparse but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and hooks on the wall for her few dresses. She dressed quickly in her simplest remaining gown and tied an apron around her waist. Jake had shown her the kitchen the night before, a large room dominated by a massive iron stove that seemed to glare at her with malevolent promise. She'd managed a simple supper of beans and cornbread that the men had eaten without complaint, but breakfast for a dozen hungry cowboys was another matter entirely. The kitchen door swung open as she was still staring at the stove, trying to remember how Jake had explained the dampers and drafts. "You're up early." Tom Brennan, the foreman, stood in the doorway. He was a weathered man in his 40s with kind brown eyes and hands scarred from decades of rope work. "Need help with the stove?" "I'd be grateful," Clara admitted. "It's rather more complex than what I'm used to." Tom showed her how to build the fire, adjust the heat, and gauge the temperature by the sound of water drops on the surface. "Cookie, that was our old cook. He used to say this stove had moods like a woman. Treat her right, and she'll do good by you. Cross her, and you'll be eating charcoal." Within an hour, Clara had coffee brewing strong enough to stand a spoon in, bacon sizzling in cast-iron skillets, and was attempting her first batch of biscuits. The dough felt wrong under her hands, too heavy. Nothing like the delicate pastries she'd made in Philadelphia. "Less handling," Tom advised, watching her work. "Biscuits ain't meant to be pretty, just filling." The cowboys began filtering in as the sun painted the eastern sky pink. They were a rough lot, faces weathered by sun and wind, clothes permanently stained with dirt and sweat. They eyed her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "Boys, this here's Miss Whitfield," Tom announced. "She'll be doing the cooking, so mind your manners." A young cowboy with sandy hair and an easy grin stepped forward. "Billy Morrison, ma'am. Mighty pleased to have a proper cook again. Tom's beef jerky like to broke our teeth." Others introduced themselves. Hank, a giant of a man with gentle eyes. Pedro, who'd come up from Mexico and worked horses better than anyone. Old Sam, whose age was anyone's guess but whose rope work was legendary. And several others whose names blurred together in Clara's nervous mind. Jake entered last, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. His gray eyes swept the room. Pausing on Clara, she pulled biscuits from the oven. They were lopsided and darker than intended, but the men fell on them like starving wolves. "These are fine, ma'am," Billy said through a mouthful of biscuit and bacon. "Better than cookies already." "Boy's lying," Old Sam grumbled. "But they'll do." The meal passed in a chaos of reaching arms, requests for more coffee, and good-natured ribbing among the men. Clara found herself constantly in motion, refilling platters, pouring coffee, trying to keep up with appetites that seemed bottomless. Jake ate quietly, observing. When the men had finished and headed out to their morning work, he lingered. "You did well," he said simply. "They're not an easy crowd." "They seem like good men." "They are, but they'll test you. It's their way." He stood, settling his hat on his head. There's a list on the wall of what Cookie used to make, and Tom can help if you need it. I'll send Billy into town later for supplies. Make a list of what you need." After he left, Clara surveyed the destruction, every plate dirty, the table littered with crumbs, pots and pans stacked high. In Philadelphia, she'd had servants for such work. Here, it was just her. She heated water and began washing, her hands soon red and raw from the lye soap. Through the window, she could see the men at work, some heading out to check cattle, others working horses in the corral. Jake stood near the barn, giving quiet orders that sent men scurrying to their tasks. Tempest was in the nearest corral, and when he saw her watching, he trotted to the fence and whinnied. "I'll come see you later," she called, and could have sworn the horse nodded. Lunch was a hurried affair, cold beef sandwiches and coffee that the men wolfed down before returning to work. But dinner required real planning. Clara studied Cookie's list, written in barely legible scrawl. Beef stew Tuesday. Fried chicken Sunday if we got any. Beans always beans. She found the root cellar stocked with potatoes, onions, and carrots. The smokehouse held plenty of beef, working from memory of meals she'd eaten rather than prepared. She began a stew. "You're peeling them potatoes too thick," a voice said from the doorway. Clara turned to find a woman watching her, the first female she'd seen since arriving. She was perhaps 35, with Mexican features and shrewd dark eyes. "I'm Rosa," the woman said. "Pedro's wife. I do the washing and mending for the ranch." She came closer, taking the knife from Clara's hand. "Like this thin peels. Waste not out here." "Thank you. I'm afraid I have much to learn." Rosa studied her with the same assessment Jake had shown. "You're not what I expected when Pedro said Jake brought home a woman." Heat flooded Clara's cheeks. "It's not, I'm just the cook." Rosa's expression was unreadable. "Jake's a good man. Hard, maybe, but fair. Been alone too long, though not natural for a man to shut himself away like that." "Shut himself away?" Rosa's eyes sharpened. "You don't know his wife died 6 years back. Fever took her and their baby girl. Jake ain't so much as looked at another woman since." Clara's hand stilled on the vegetables. She thought of Jake's careful distance, the way he'd helped her into the wagon without really touching her. A man carrying ghosts. "That's terribly sad." "It is, but maybe things change." Rosa handed back the knife. "Brown the meat first, before adding water, makes better flavor. And those biscuits this morning. Next time, use cold lard, not warm. Makes them flakier." The woman left as quietly as she'd come, leaving Clara with much to think about. The stew, thanks to Rosa's advice, was passable. The men ate with their usual enthusiasm, though Clara noticed Jake's portion was smaller than the others. He looked tired, lines of strain around his eyes. "Good meal," Tom commented, mopping his bowl with bread. "You're getting the hang of it, Miss Whitfield." After dinner, Clara stepped outside for air. The evening was cool, stars beginning to prick the darkening sky. She found herself walking toward the corral where Tempest stood. The stallion came immediately, pushing his head over the fence to greet her. She stroked his neck, finding comfort in his warm presence. "Lonely out here, isn't it, boy?" she murmured. "Gets easier." She turned to find Jake approaching, his form more shadow than substance in the twilight. "I didn't mean to disturb your horse." "You're not disturbing him, or me." He leaned against the fence, a careful distance from her. "How are you finding things?" "It's different, but I'm managing." "The men giving you trouble?" "No, they've been respectful, helpful, even." Jake nodded. "Good. They know I'd skin anyone who wasn't." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Tempest, who seemed content to have both their attention. "Rosa came by today," Clara ventured. Jake's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Did she helped with the cooking?" "That all she helped with?" Clara understood. She mentioned your loss. I'm sorry. Jake was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. Then, Margaret would have liked you. She had a way with Tempest, too. Used to sneak him apples when she thought I wasn't looking. It was the first personal thing he'd shared, and Clara treasured it like the gift it was. I should go in, she said eventually. Early morning tomorrow. Every morning's early on a ranch. But his tone was gentle. You're doing fine. Clara, better than fine. It was the first time he'd used her given name. As she walked back to the kitchen, she felt something shift between them, still careful, still distant, but with the possibility of something more. Inside, she made her list for supplies: flour, sugar, salt, coffee, dried beans. Basic things for basic meals, but at the bottom, she added something else: fabric suitable for work dresses. If she was going to make this her home, she needed to dress the part. Through her small window, she could see Jake still by the corral, a solitary figure against the vastness of the prairie, a man who'd loved and lost, who'd built walls as sturdy as any fence. But walls could come down, Clara thought, given time and patience. She'd seen it with Tempest wildness gentled into trust. Perhaps it could happen with a man, too. For now, though, there were dishes to wash and bread to set rising for morning. One day, one meal, one small trust at a time. That was how lives were rebuilt, whether in Philadelphia ballrooms or Wyoming kitchens. As she worked, she heard the Cowboys in the bunkhouse, their laughter and the scrape of a fiddle. Jake's footsteps on the porch, Tempest's neigh from the corral, the sounds of her new life, rough but real. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, for the first time in months, Clara Whitfield felt something she'd thought lost forever. She felt like she was home. 3 weeks had passed since Clara's arrival at the Circle S when Jake announced at breakfast that he needed supplies from town. I'll make a list, Clara said, already mentally cataloging what the kitchen needed. You'll come with us, Jake said, not looking up from his coffee. Need to get you proper work clothes, and you'll know better than me what the kitchen requires. The Cowboys exchanged glances. It was the first time Jake had suggested Clara return to Cedar Ridge since bringing her to the ranch. I'll hitch up the wagon, Tom offered, but Jake shook his head. We'll ride faster that way. Can you sit a horse, Clara? It's been years, but yes. Good. We leave in an hour. Clara's stomach nodded as she cleared breakfast dishes. Cedar Ridge meant facing those stairs again, the whispers, the judgment. But she needed those work dresses desperately. Her few remaining gowns were nearly worn through. She met Jake by the barn where he had 2 horses saddled. One was a gentle bay mare, the other his own mount, a rangy chestnut. Tempest paced in his corral, clearly agitated at being left behind. Easy, boy, Jake soothed. We'll be back before dark. He helped Clara mount, his hands steadying her waist for a brief moment. Martha here is calm as they come. She'll take care of you. The ride to town passed quietly, Jake setting an easy pace. Clara found her body remembering the rhythm, though her muscles protested the unfamiliar exercise. The vast prairie stretched around them, grass rippling like a golden sea. As they neared Cedar Ridge, Clara's tension grew. Jake noticed. Anyone gives you trouble, you let me know. I can handle myself. His mouth quirked. I don't doubt it, but you're under my protection now. That means something out here. The main street was busy with Saturday traffic ranchers in for supplies, wives doing shopping, children darting between wagons, heads turned as they rode in, conversations stuttering to a halt. That's her. Clara heard someone whisper, the woman Jake Sullivan took to his ranch. Heard she bewitched his horse. Heard other things too. No decent woman travels alone. Jake dismounted at the general store, his movements deliberately calm, but Clara saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand rested near his gun belt. Mrs. Patterson runs the store. he told Clara as he helped her down. She'll have fabric and notions. I'll handle the ranch supplies. The store's interior was dim and crammed with goods, bolts of fabric, sacks of flour, tools hanging from the rafters. Mrs. Patterson, a stern woman with steel-gray hair, looked up from her ledger. "Mr. Sullivan," her eyes fixed on Clara, cold and assessing. "And you must be the new cook." The pause before cook was deliberate, laden with implication. "Miss Whitfield," Clara said evenly. "I need fabric for work dresses, if you please." Mrs. Patterson led her to the fabric section, pulling out bolts of sturdy cotton and wool. "These are what most ranch women wear, though I suppose you're used to finer things." "These will do perfectly." Clara selected several yards of practical brown and blue fabric, ignoring the barb. As Mrs. Patterson cut the cloth, the shop bell chimed. A well-dressed man entered, tall, handsome in a polished way that spoke of money and ease. His eyes found Clara immediately. Well, I heard Jake Sullivan had taken in a stray, but I didn't expect such a lovely one." Clara stiffened. The man's tone made her skin crawl. "Richard Dalton," he said, sweeping off his hat. "I own the Double D Ranch north of the Circle S, and you are—" "Busy," Clara said shortly, turning back to her fabric selection. Dalton laughed. "Spirited? I like that." He moved closer, crowding her space. "Must be lonely out at Sullivan's place. If you ever want more, refined company, my door is always open." "The lady said she's busy. Dalton?" Jake stood in the doorway, his stance casual but eyes hard as flint. "Sullivan." Dalton's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just being neighborly." "Your ranch is 15 miles from mine. That's about as neighborly as I like it." The two men faced each other, the air crackling with unspoken challenge. Mrs. Patterson clutched her scissors, while other customers pressed against the walls. "How are those water rights treating you?" Dalton asked silkily. "Heard you've been having trouble with Willow Creek running low." "My water's fine. For now. Things change, though, especially when someone's got prior claims." Dalton settled his hat back on his head. "Miss Whitfield," Clara said reluctantly. "Miss Whitfield, a pleasure." He tipped his hat mockingly. "I'm sure we'll meet again." After he left, the store remained tense. Mrs. Patterson finished cutting Clara's fabric in silence, her disapproval even more pronounced. Outside, Jake loaded their purchases with sharp, efficient movements. "What did he mean about water rights?" Clara asked. "Dalton's been trying to push me off my land for years, controls most of the water upstream. Every summer he finds new ways to make trouble." Jake helped her mount, his jaw tight. "Stay clear of him. Clara, he's dangerous when he wants something. And he wants your ranch, among other things." The look Jake gave her made his meaning clear. They stopped at the feed store, the blacksmith gathering supplies everywhere. Clara felt eyes following them, heard whispers trailing in their wake. Some were merely curious, but others held an uglier edge. At the barber shop, while Jake conducted business, Clara waited with the horses. A group of women passed, their skirts held high to avoid the dusty street. "That's her," one hissed. "Bold as brass, living out there with all those men." "No better than she should be, I'd say." "Did you hear she came from back east, probably running from scandal?" Clara kept her eyes fixed ahead, cheeks burning. They weren't entirely wrong. She was running from scandal, but not the kind they imagined. Ladies. The women froze. Jake had emerged from the barber shop, his expression dangerously polite. "Mrs. Mills, Mrs. Foster, Miss Young." He touched his hat brim. "Fine day for gossip, isn't it?" The women scattered like chickens, faces flushed with embarrassment. "You didn't have to do that," Clara said as they rode out of town. "Yes, I did." His voice was grim. "Dalton's already stirring up enough trouble without the town hens adding to it." "What kind of trouble?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "Richard Dalton likes to own things. Land, cattle, people. He's bought up most of the smaller ranches around here, through money or other means. The Circle S is one of the few he can't touch. Because of the water rights. My claim on Willow Creek is solid, filed it properly years ago. But Dalton's got lawyers, connections. He's been looking for any excuse to challenge it." Jake glanced at her. "And now he's seen something else he wants." Clara shivered despite the warm afternoon sun. She'd known men like Dalton in Philadelphia's smooth surface hiding rot beneath. "I can take care of myself," she said. "I know you can, but out here, you don't have to do it alone." They rode in companionable silence after that. As the Circle S came into view, Tempest's neigh carried across the distance. The black stallion was pressed against the corral fence, practically dancing with impatience. "Fool horse," Jake muttered, but his tone was affectionate. "Acts like we've been gone a week." As soon as Clara dismounted, Tempest demanded attention, whickering and tossing his head until she went to greet him. Yes, I missed you too," she laughed, stroking his neck. "Though how you can miss anyone when you have this whole ranch to rule over." "He's gotten attached," Jake observed. "Never seen him like this with anyone, but—" He stopped abruptly. "But Margaret?" Clara finished gently. Jake's nod was barely perceptible. "She used to say Tempest was a better judge of character than most people." He took Martha's reins. "I'll see to the horses. Tom can help you with the supplies." But as Clara headed for the kitchen, she heard Billy call out from the barn. "Boss, we got trouble. Fence is cut along the north pasture, about 30 head missing." Jake's expression turned thunderous. "When?" "Must have been while we were moving the herd to the east section this morning." "Dalton," Tom said grimly, joining them. "His boys were sniffing around that area yesterday." "Can't prove it," Jake said. "That's always the problem. Round up who you can, we're riding out." The men scattered to prepare. Clara watched the controlled chaos, understanding dawning. This was what Jake had meant about Dalton making trouble. Not direct confrontation, but constant pressure, stolen cattle, cut fences, a war of attrition designed to wear him down. "Will you be all right here?" Jake asked her. "Rosa's at her place if you need anything." "I'll be fine. Be careful." Something flickered in his eyes at her concern. "Always am." As the men rode out, Clara stood on the porch, shading her eyes against the setting sun. The ranch suddenly felt very empty, very exposed. She thought of Dalton's oily smile, the way he'd looked at her like something to be acquired. Inside, she unpacked her fabric, trying to focus on practical matters. But her hands trembled slightly as she measured and cut. The frontier, she was learning, had its own kinds of dangers. In Philadelphia, scandal had driven her out. Here, she sensed, the threats might be more direct. But as Tempest called from his corral, lonely without Jake, Clara squared her shoulders. She'd faced down society's scorn, and survived. She could handle one greedy rancher. Though, as darkness fell and the men still hadn't returned, she found herself checking the locks on the doors and keeping the shotgun Jake had shown her within easy reach. The Wild West, she was discovering, was aptly named. The attack came at dawn, 5 days after the fence-cutting incident. Clara was kneading bread dough when she heard Tempest's wild neighing, followed by men's shouts and the thunder of hooves. She ran to the window. 6 riders were circling the corral where Tempest reared and struck out with his hooves. 2 men with lassos were trying to rope him while others kept watch. Even from the kitchen, she could see the Double D brand on their horses. Without thinking, Clara grabbed the shotgun from beside the door and ran outside. The morning air was crisp, her breath forming clouds as she raised the weapon. "Get away from that horse!" The men wheeled their mounts around. One, a scarred brute she recognized from town, laughed. "Well, boys, look what we got here. Sullivan's woman thinks she can handle a gun. I know which end the bullets come from, Clara said steadily. That's enough. Boss wants that horse, another rider said. Says Sullivan stole it from him years back. That's a lie. Don't matter if it is or ain't. You gonna stop all 6 of us, little lady? Clara's hands trembled slightly, but she kept the shotgun raised. The men will be back from the range any moment. The scarred man's grin widened. No, they won't. They're dealing with a grass fire on the south pasture right about now. Funny how those things start. They'd been drawn away deliberately. Clara's heart sank, but she didn't lower the gun. Tempest screamed again, striking out as a lasso settled around his neck. The stallion fought viciously, but with multiple ropes. It was only a matter of time. Stop! Clara moved closer. Finger on the trigger. I'll shoot. No, you won't. The scarred man dismounted, walking toward her with lazy confidence. Nice women don't shoot people, and you're trying so hard to be nice. Ain't you trying to pretend you belong here? He was close now, too close. Clara could smell whiskey and sweat, see the calculation in his eyes. Course, maybe you ain't so nice. Maybe those rumors in town are true. Maybe Sullivan's been getting more than cooking from you. That's close enough. Or what? He reached for the gun barrel. Clara pulled the trigger. The blast knocked her backward, the shot going high but close enough to make the man dive aside with a curse. His hat flew off. A neat hole punched through the crown. You crazy. But his words were cut off by the sound of pounding hooves. Not from the expected direction of the south pasture, but from the barn. Jake burst into view on his chestnut. Tom and Billy close behind. They must have seen through the diversion or returned early. Jake didn't slow down. He rode straight at the man threatening Clara, using his horse as a battering ram. The outlaw scrambled aside, barely avoiding the crushing hooves. Circle S, Tom shouted, and suddenly the morning erupted in chaos. The Double D men released Tempest, going for their guns. Jake was already off his horse, moving with deadly purpose toward the scarred man who'd threatened Clara. Figured you'd try something like this. Dalton, Jake said, his voice eerily calm, sending your dogs to do your dirty work. Don't know what you mean. Sullivan, my boys were just recovering stolen property. Clara turned to see Richard Dalton himself riding up, flanked by more men. He sat his horse like a general surveying a battlefield. That horse was never yours, Jake said. I have a bill of sale, says different. Bought him from a Mexican trader in '69. Forged, like everything else you touch. Dalton's smile was cold. Prove it. The two groups faced each other, hands hovering near weapons. Clara counted Dalton had brought 9 men to their 4, 5 counting her, though her spent shotgun wouldn't be much use. Then Tempest changed everything. The stallion, freed from the ropes but wild with rage, charged, not at Jake or Clara, but straight at Dalton, the man's horse. Sensing the stallion's fury, reared in panic. Dalton, caught off guard, tumbled from the saddle. Tempest reared over him, hooves poised to strike. Dalton cowered in the dirt, all pretense of control gone. Call him off, he screamed. Sullivan, call off your devil horse. Jake made no move. Seems like Tempest has his own opinion about who owns him. The stallion's hooves came down inches from Dalton's head, sending dirt flying. The man scrambled backward on his hands and knees, dignity forgotten. Please, Tempest, Clara called softly. That's enough. Come here. The stallion's ears flicked toward her. He gave Dalton one more threatening stomp, then trotted to Clara's side, allowing her to grasp his mane. Get up, Dalton, Jake said. Get up and get off my land. Dalton struggled to his feet, his fine clothes ruined, face mottled with rage and humiliation. This isn't over. Sullivan, that horse is proof. Proof of what? That he knows snake oil when he smells it. Jake's hand rested on his gun. You've got 10 seconds to clear out. Next time you or your men set foot on my land, we'll settle this permanent. You threaten me with witnesses. I defend what's mine. Law's clear on that. Jake's eyes were cold as winter steel. 10, 9, 8. Mount up, Dalton snarled at his men. As they prepared to leave, his gaze found Clara. This isn't finished. Sullivan can't protect you forever. 7, 6. They rode out in a cloud of dust and curses. Jake didn't move until they were specks on the horizon. Then his shoulders sagged slightly. Anyone hurt? He asked. Just their pride. Tom said, Billy, check that fence line again. I'll scout the perimeter. As the men dispersed, Jake turned to Clara. She still stood with Tempest, one hand twisted in his mane, the shotgun hanging loose in her other hand. You fired that gun. He said it wasn't a question. I missed. You stood your ground. That matters more than aim. He looked at the hole in the dropped hat. Though your aim wasn't bad either. Clara's legs suddenly felt weak. The reality of what had almost happened, what could have happened, crashed over her. They were going to take Tempest. They were going to take more than that. Jake's jaw was tight. I should have left more men here. Should have known Dalton would try something while we were gone. You couldn't have known about the fire. It was a diversion. Oldest trick there is. And I fell for it. He ran a hand through his hair. If something had happened to you... Nothing did. Clara straightened her spine. And nothing will. I'm not some helpless Eastern flower. Jake. No, he said quietly. You're not. Tempest nudged Clara's shoulder, whickering softly. She stroked his neck, feeling the racing heartbeat slowly calm. He really was ready to kill for you, Jake observed. He was protecting his home. We all were. Something shifted in Jake's expression. Yes, I suppose you were. Rosa appeared from the direction of her cabin, Pedro beside her. We heard shooting, she said, taking in the scene. Dalton. Who else? Jake confirmed. Rosa muttered something in Spanish that didn't sound complimentary. That man is a plague. First he blocks water, then he steals cattle. Now this. It's going to get worse, Jake said grimly. He's not used to being backed down, especially not in front of his men. What can we do? Clara asked. We prepare. Post guards. Keep the horses closer to the buildings. Jake looked at each of them. Anyone wants to leave. Now's the time. No shame in it. This isn't your fight. Been here 8 years, Tom said. Not leaving now. My fight is your fight, Jefe, Pedro added. Others voiced similar sentiments as they gathered. Even old Sam, who complained about everything, spat tobacco juice and declared, Dalton's been needing a lesson for years. Might as well be us that gives it. As the men dispersed to their duties, Jake lingered. You should go back inside. You're shaking. Clara looked down at her trembling hands with surprise. I suppose I am. First time's always hard. Gets easier. He paused. No, that's not true. It gets necessary, but never easier. Not for decent folk. Is that what I am, decent folk? Jake studied her hair escaping from its pins, dressed dirty from the morning's work, shotgun still gripped in white knuckles. You stood between 6 armed men and Tempest with nothing but courage and birdshot. I'd say that makes you better than decent. He gently took the shotgun from her hands. Come on, I'll show you how to reload this proper, and maybe we'll work on that aim. As they walked toward the house, Tempest following like a large dog, Clara asked, Do you really think Dalton will come back? I think he'll do worse than come back. He'll use every trick, every connection, every dirty deal he can think of. Jake's expression was grim but determined. But he made a mistake today. What's that? He threatened you, made it personal. Jake held the door for her. The Circle S takes care of its own, Clara, and like it or not, you're one of us now. Looking back at the yard where she'd made her stand, Clara felt something fundamental had shifted. She'd come west running from one life, But somewhere between sunrise and this moment, she'd stopped running and started fighting for a new one. The bread dough had overrisen during the excitement, but she'd make do. Out here, she was learning. You always made do. You stood your ground. You protected what mattered. And apparently, what mattered now included a black stallion, a haunted cowboy, and a ranch worth fighting for. The following week passed intense watchfulness. Guards were posted day and night, and no one rode out alone. Clara had taken to wearing the smaller pistol Jake had given her, its weight strange but comforting against her hip. It was a quiet evening when everything changed. Most of the men were at supper, tired from a long day moving cattle to safer pastures. Clara was serving stew when Pedro burst through the door. "Boss Tempest is down. They shot him with something he's thrashing bad." Jake's chair crashed backward as he leaped up. Clara was right behind him, her heart in her throat. They found Tempest in his stall, sides heaving, legs kicking weakly. Foam flecked his mouth, and his eyes rolled wildly. An ugly wound marked his neck. "Poison dart," Tom said grimly, holding up a small projectile. "Seen this before. Rustlers use them to take down horses quiet-like." Jake knelt beside his horse, hands gentle on the sweat-soaked neck. "Easy, boy, easy." "Will he?" Clara couldn't finish the question. "Depends on the poison. Pedro, ride for town. Get Doc Harmon, he knows horses as well as people." Jake's voice was controlled, but Clara saw the tremor in his hands. "Tell him it might be wolfsbane or worse." As Pedro galloped off, Clara dropped to her knees beside Jake. Tempest's breathing was labored, each breath a struggle. "There must be something we can do. Keep him calm. Keep him fighting." Jake's gray eyes met hers. "He's strong. He's fought through worse." But they both knew this was different. This was Dalton striking at the heart of what mattered most. Clara stroked Tempest's face, singing softly an old lullaby her mother had sung years ago. The horse's ears flickered toward her voice. "That's it," she whispered. "Stay with us. You're too stubborn to give up now." Through the night, they fought for Tempest's life. Doc Harmon arrived near midnight, his face grim as he examined the wound. "It's a cocktail wolfsbane, hemlock, and something else, meant to kill slow and painful." He prepared a syringe. "This might help, might not. Best we can do is support him through it." The hours crawled by. Cowboys came and went, offering silent support. Even old Sam, who pretended not to care about anything, brought coffee and kept vigil. Jake never left Tempest's side, and Clara stayed with him, somewhere in those dark hours. As they worked together to keep the horse calm, she felt the last walls between them crumble. "I lost Margaret in a night like this," Jake said suddenly, sitting beside her, helpless, watching her fight for breath. Clara's hand found his. "This is different." "Is it Dalton's taking everything, piece by piece? First cattle, then water, now Tempest." His voice was raw. "Maybe I should take his offer. Sell out. End this before—" "Before what?" "Before he hurts you too." The words seemed torn from him. "I've lost enough. Clara, I can't—" "You won't lose me." She squeezed his hand. "Or Tempest, or the ranch. We're fighters. Remember." As dawn broke, Tempest's breathing eased slightly. His eyes, while still pained, showed more awareness. When Clara offered water, he drank weakly. "He's turning the corner," Doc Harmon said, exhausted but hopeful. "If he makes it through today, he'll likely survive, but he'll be weak for weeks." Jake's relief was palpable. "Thank you, Doc." "Thank her." The doctor nodded at Clara. "That singing, the calm presence horses know when someone's fighting for them." After the doctor left, Jake and Clara sat in the straw, watching Tempest rest. The morning sun slanted through the barn doors, painting everything golden. "Clara," Jake began, then stopped. She waited, sensing the importance of whatever he was struggling to say. That first day, when Tempest bowed to you, I knew you were different, special, but I told myself I was done with feeling things. He looked at her then. Walls completely down. I was wrong. Clara's breath caught. Jake, I know you're running from something back east. I don't care what it is. All I care about is now, here. He touched her face gently. You've brought something back to life in me. Clara, something I thought died with Margaret. You've done the same for me, she whispered. I came here lost, broken. But this place, these people, you've given me a home. He leaned toward her, and their lips met soft, tentative, a promise more than passion. When they pulled apart, Tempest nickered softly, as if in approval. He's going to be okay, Clara said, stroking the horse's neck. We all are, Jake agreed. But Dalton will be dealt with. Clara's voice turned steel. He tried to kill Tempest. He threatens everything we've built. It's time to stop playing defense. Jake studied her with something like wonder. You're not the same woman who stepped off that stage. No, that woman was running. This one stands and fights. Billy appeared in the doorway. Boss, Ryder's coming. It's Sheriff Watson and a bunch of men from town. They met the sheriff in the yard. Watson was a decent man, but careful not to antagonize the powerful ranchers who essentially paid his salary. Jake, I've got papers here, the sheriff said uncomfortably. Dalton's filed a formal complaint. Says you stole his horse, threatened him, and that your men have been rustling his cattle. That's rich, Tom spat, seeing as how it's our cattle gone missing. I'm just serving the papers, Watson continued. You'll need to appear before Judge Coleman next week. Bring any proof of ownership for that black stallion. After the sheriff left, the Circle S men gathered, anger crackling like lightning. It's a setup, Billy said. Coleman's in Dalton's pocket. Even if he wasn't, our proof is Jake's word against a forged bill of sale, Tom added. Clara stood. What if there was a witness, someone who could testify about the original sale? Jake shook his head. That Mexican trader disappeared years ago. Probably dead. Then we find another way. Clara's mind raced. Dalton's not the only one who can play legal games. Give me 3 days. To do what? To fight like an Eastern woman knows how with papers and laws and connections. She smiled grimly. You've taught me to shoot and ride. Now let me teach you how we destroy a man's reputation in Philadelphia society. Jake looked skeptical, but Tom laughed. Let her try, boss. Can't be worse than shooting it out. That evening, as Clara sat writing letters by lamplight to lawyers she'd known, journalists who owed her father favors, even a judge who'd courted her sister, she felt Jake watching from the doorway. You're full of surprises, Clara Whitfield. We all have our weapons, she said, sealing another envelope. Dalton made a mistake thinking I was just some helpless Eastern woman. He's about to learn that Eastern women have our own ways of fighting. And if it doesn't work? Clara looked up, green eyes fierce. Then we use your way, but either way, we protect what's ours. Jake crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. How did I get so lucky to find you? You didn't find me, Clara corrected, melting into his embrace. Tempest did. From the barn came a weak but unmistakable whinny, as if the horse was reminding them he was still part of this fight. We should check on him. Clara said, in a minute. Jake held her tighter. Just let me hold you for a minute. Tomorrow we go to war. Tonight, I just want to remember what we're fighting for. Standing there in the lamplight, wrapped in each other's arms while their enemies plotted and their horse slowly healed, they found strength in each other. The battle ahead would be fierce, but they would face it together. The Circle S had become more than a ranch. It had become a family. And families, Clara had learned, protected their own no matter the cost. The morning of the court hearing arrived gray and threatening, matching everyone's mood. Clara's letters had gone unanswered, or rather, The responses that came were polite refusals. Dalton's reach was longer than she'd anticipated. "We'll face whatever comes," Jake said as they prepared to ride to town. He wore his best shirt, clean but worn at the cuffs. Together, Clara adjusted the simple bonnet she'd made from leftover fabric. Together, they rode in a group: Jake, Clara, Tom, and several other hands. Tempest was still too weak to travel, left in Pedro's careful care. The horse had survived, but the poison had taken its toll. He might never be the same. Cedar Ridge was crowded. Word of the hearing had spread, and it seemed half the territory had come to watch Jake Sullivan finally get taken down a peg, or so the whispers suggested. Inside the makeshift courtroom, really just the town hall, with benches arranged, Judge Coleman presided like a vulture over prey. His connections to Dalton were an open secret, but legal nonetheless. Dalton sat in the front row, immaculate in a city suit, surrounded by his hired men and a slick lawyer from Denver. He caught Clara's eye and smiled coldly. "The matter before us," Judge Coleman intoned, "is the ownership of one black stallion, currently in possession of Jake Sullivan, and allegations of theft and assault against Mr. Richard Dalton." Dalton's lawyer rose smoothly. "We have clear documentation, Your Honor, a bill of sale dated 1869, properly witnessed." He produced the paper with a flourish. Jake's jaw tightened. It looked authentic enough to fool anyone who didn't know better. "Mr. Sullivan." The judge's tone suggested the outcome was already decided. "Your response?" Jake stood. "That document is forged. I won Tempest fair and square in a poker game from Miguel Vasquez. The horse has been mine for 8 years. Can you produce this Miguel Vasquez? He left the territory years ago." "How convenient. Any other witnesses to this alleged poker game?" "I was there," Tom said, standing. "Saw the whole thing." "As was I," old Sam added. Dalton's lawyer smiled thinly. "Of course, mister. Sullivan's own employees would support his story. Hardly credible witnesses." The hearing proceeded with grinding inevitability. Every point Jake raised was countered by legal technicalities or dismissed as hearsay. Clara watched it unfold with growing fury. Then the courtroom door burst open. "Sorry I'm late. Judge, stage got delayed." A small, well-dressed man entered, carrying a leather portfolio. He had the sharp look of a city lawyer, but dust on his boots that said he'd traveled hard. "And you are?" Judge Coleman asked irritably. "Thomas Hartwell, attorney at law, from Philadelphia." He glanced at Clara and winked. "I believe I'm just in time to present some relevant evidence." Clara's heart leaped. One letter had found its mark after all to her father's former law partner, a man who owed her family considerable favors. "This is highly irregular," Dalton's lawyer began. "Justice delayed is justice denied," Hartwell countered smoothly. "May I approach?" What followed was a masterclass in legal warfare. Hartwell produced document after document affidavits from horse traders throughout the territory stating they'd never sold a black stallion to Dalton. Records showing Dalton's history of forged bills of sale in other territories. Even a statement from a banker detailing suspicious payments. "Furthermore," Hartwell continued, "I have here a telegram from Miguel Vasquez himself, currently residing in California. He confirms selling correction, losing the horse to Jake Sullivan in a poker game on June 15th, 1869. He's willing to travel here to testify if needed." The courtroom erupted. Dalton shot to his feet. "This is preposterous. You can't just—" "Sit down, Mr. Dalton," Judge Coleman said weakly. Even he couldn't ignore such overwhelming evidence. But Dalton wasn't finished. His face had turned an ugly purple. "You think you've won? Sullivan, this changes nothing." "It changes everything," Jake said quietly. "Does it?" Dalton's voice rose. "You still have no water once I dam the creek. Your cattle will die of thirst. Your precious ranch will dry up and blow away. And that whore you're protecting." He never finished. Jake moved faster than Clara had ever seen him move, his fist connecting with Dalton's jaw with a satisfying crack. Dalton went down hard, blood spurting from his nose. "Jake, no!" Clara cried, but it was too late. Dalton's men surged forward. Tom and the Circle S cowboys met them halfway. The courtroom exploded into chaos, fists flying, chairs breaking, women screaming. Clara found herself backed against a wall as the brawl raged. A Double D ranch hand lunged at her, apparently deciding if he couldn't get to Jake, she'd do. She reached for the pistol at her hip, but someone else got there first. Sheriff Watson, of all people, stepped between them. "That's enough, everyone stand down or I'll jail the lot of you." It took several minutes and liberal use of the sheriff's gun butt, but order was finally restored. Men nursed split lips and black eyes. Dalton sat on the floor, holding a handkerchief to his bleeding nose. "Jake Sullivan," the sheriff said wearily. "I'm arresting you for assault." "Worth it," Jake said, flexing his bruised knuckles. "Wait," Judge Coleman interrupted. He looked deeply uncomfortable. Given the provocative nature of Mr. Dalton's words and the evidence of his fraudulent claims, I'm inclined to view this as mutual combat. No charges filed. Dalton struggled to his feet. "You're making a mistake, Coleman. All of you are." "The only mistake," Hartwell said coolly, "would be continuing to associate with a man whose criminal activities are about to become very public. I've sent copies of all documentation to newspapers in Denver, Cheyenne, and San Francisco. Mr. Dalton's reputation, such as it is, won't survive the exposure." "You," Dalton pointed a shaking finger at Clara. "This is your doing. You'll pay for this." "Is that a threat?" Sheriff Watson asked. "Because I'd be happy to arrest you for that." Dalton stormed out, his men trailing behind. Through the window, Clara saw him mounting his horse, gesturing violently as he spoke to his men. Whatever he was planning, it wouldn't be legal. "We should go," Tom said urgently. "He'll hit the ranch while we're gone." But as they hurried outside, they found Pedro riding hard down the main street, Tempest running beside him, weak but determined. "Boss," Pedro called. "Dalton's men, they're at the creek with dynamite. They're going to blow the dam, flood the valley." Jake's face went white. "If they flood the valley?" "The house, the barns, everything's in the flood path," Tom finished. Without another word, Jake vaulted onto his horse. Clara scrambled onto Martha as the men mounted up around them. "Clara, stay here," Jake ordered. "Like hell," she shot back, spurring Martha forward. They rode hard, Tempest galloping beside them despite his weakness. As they crested the hill overlooking the ranch, they could see smoke rising from the direction of Willow Creek. "They've started," Tom shouted. The scene at the creek was chaos. Dalton's men had set charges along the natural dam that controlled water flow. If it blew, the spring flood would be catastrophic. "Stop them!" Jake roared. Gunfire erupted. Clara kept low on Martha's neck as bullets whistled overhead. She saw Jake riding straight for the dam, Tom and Billy covering him. Then she saw Dalton himself, lighting a fuse connected to the main charge. Without thinking, Clara kicked Martha toward him. Dalton looked up, raising his pistol, but Tempest was faster. The stallion, summoning strength from somewhere deep, slammed into Dalton's horse. Both men went down in a tangle. Clara leaped from Martha, scrambling for the burning fuse. Her fingers closed on it inches from the dynamite, yanking it free. The effort sent her tumbling down the bank toward the roiling water. Strong hands caught her Jake, his face tight with fear and fury. "I told you to stay back." "And miss all the fun," she gasped. Around them, the battle was turning. Outnumbered and with their leader down, Dalton's men were surrendering or fleeing. Sheriff Watson arrived with a posse, finally deciding which side the law should support. They found Dalton semi-conscious, leg bent at an ugly angle where his horse had fallen on him. As they loaded him onto a wagon, he managed to focus on Jake and Clara. "This isn't over," he wheezed. "Yes," Jake said quietly. "It is. You're done in this territory, Dalton. If you're smart, you'll sell out and leave. If you're not," he shrugged. "Well, you've seen what happens when you threaten what's mine." As the wagon rolled away, Clara leaned against Jake, suddenly exhausted. Around them, men were carefully removing the remaining dynamite, making the dam safe. "That was incredibly stupid," Jake said into her hair, riding into gunfire, grabbing live fuses. "I learned from the best," she murmured. "Besides, someone had to save our home." "Our home," Jake repeated softly. "I like the sound of that." Tempest limped over, nuzzling them both. The poison had weakened him. The day's exertion had nearly finished him, but he'd fought when it counted. "Looks like we all saved each other," Clara said, stroking the horse's neck. Tom approached, grinning despite a spectacular black eye. "Well, boss, I'd say we won this round." "We won the war," Jake corrected. He looked at his ranch, his men, his woman, his horse, everything Dalton had tried to take. Sometimes a man has to fight for what matters. "And sometimes," Clara added, linking her arm through his, "a woman does too." As they headed home, the Circle S ranch spreading before them in the afternoon sun, Clara felt the last chains of her old life fall away. She'd come west as a refugee from scandal. She'd stayed as a cook, but she'd fought as a rancher, a partner, a woman who'd found where she belonged. The battle was won. Now, finally, they could start building the future. The dust settled slowly over the Circle S ranch in the days following the battle at Willow Creek. News traveled fast across the territory. Richard Dalton, the man who'd built an empire on intimidation and fraud, had been brought low by Jake Sullivan and a woman from back east. Some said it was justice long overdue. Others muttered that Sullivan had gotten lucky. But everyone agreed on one thing: Clara Whitfield had proved herself as tough as any woman born to the frontier. The morning after Sheriff Watson hauled Dalton away, Clara stood on the porch watching the sun rise over land that finally felt secure. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen where she'd already started breakfast. But for once, she allowed herself a moment of stillness. "You're up early, even for you." Jake emerged from the house, his hair still mussed from sleep. He'd taken to sleeping in the main house since the fight, ostensibly to guard against retaliation, though Clara suspected other reasons. "Couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Keep expecting to hear horses, gunshots." "It's over. Clara, Dalton's finished. His lawyer sent word yesterday he's selling out, heading back east once his leg heals." Jake moved to stand beside her, not quite touching but close enough that she felt his warmth. "We won." "We survived," Clara corrected. "Now we have to figure out what comes next." Before Jake could respond, Tom appeared from the direction of the barn, his face unusually solemn. "Boss, we got company coming. Looks like half the town." Clara's stomach dropped. Had Dalton's men regrouped? But as the riders came into view, she realized this was different. These were townspeople, merchants, ranchers, even some of the women who'd whispered behind her back. At their head rode Mrs. Patterson from the general store, looking decidedly uncomfortable. Mr. Sullivan," she said as they reined up in the yard. "Miss Whitfield, we've come to, that is, the town council has asked us to—" "Spit it out, Henrietta," said a gruff rancher Clara recognized as Ben Morrison from the Lazy M. "We've come to apologize." Clara blinked in surprise. Jake's expression remained carefully neutral. "Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat. "We misjudged you, Miss Whitfield. Let gossip and Dalton's insinuations cloud our thinking. What you did standing up to those outlaws, protecting the ranch, saving the damn well, it showed us who you really are." A true woman of the West, another woman added. One of us. We brought some things. Mrs. Patterson continued, gesturing to the loaded wagon behind them. Lumber for repairs, food supplies, fabric for new curtains. It's not much, but it's appreciated. Jake said quietly, Thank you. As the townspeople unloaded their offerings, mixing awkwardly with the Circle S cowboys, Clara found herself surrounded by women who weeks ago wouldn't have acknowledged her existence. That was a brave thing you did, said a young mother, shifting her baby on her hip. My husband says you rode straight into gunfire. Anyone would have done the same. Clara said, No, the woman said firmly. They wouldn't have. Most of us would have stayed in town, wringing our hands. You fought for your home. Our home, Jake corrected, appearing at Clara's elbow. The possessive note in his voice made several women exchange knowing glances. After the crowd departed, leaving behind enough supplies to see them through winter, Clara and Jake walked toward the corral where Tempest stood. The stallion was still thin from his ordeal, but his eyes were bright, his spirit unbroken. That was unexpected, Clara said. People respect strength out here. You showed them plenty. Jake leaned against the fence, watching his horse. Clara, there's something I need to say. She waited, sensing the weight of the moment. When Margaret died, I thought that was the end of feeling anything good, thought the ranch was all I had left, all I deserved. He turned to face her. Then you arrived, and Tempest bowed to you, and everything I thought I knew got turned on its head. Jake, let me finish, please. He took a breath. I'm not good with words, better with horses than people. But I know this when I saw you riding toward that burning fuse. I realized something. Losing the ranch would have hurt. Losing you would have killed me. Clara's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. Jake continued. I know you came here running from something. But if you're willing to stop running, to make this permanent— Yes, Clara interrupted. Yes to all of it. Jake's smile was like sunrise after a long night. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion he'd kept locked away for 6 years. When they broke apart, Tempest whinnied approval. There's still things to figure out. Jake said, The ranch needs rebuilding, and we'll figure it out together. Clara said firmly, That's what partners do. That evening, the Circle S had a celebration. Rosa cooked her special tamales, Pedro played his guitar, and even old Sam smiled once or twice. Billy proposed toast after toast until Tom threatened to throw him in the horse trough. To Miss Clara, Billy said, swaying slightly, who showed us all that being a lady don't mean being weak. To the boss, Tom added, for finally coming back to life. To Tempest, Clara said, raising her glass of Rosa's fierce homemade wine. For knowing where I belonged before I did. As if understanding, Tempest neighed from his stall, setting everyone laughing. Later, as the party wound down, Clara and Jake sat on the porch steps, watching stars emerge in the vast Wyoming sky. I should tell you, Clara said quietly, about Philadelphia, about why I left. Only if you want to. She took a breath. I was engaged. To a man my father chose wealthy, connected, everything a society match should be. Then I discovered he was already keeping a mistress, had been throughout our courtship. When I confronted him, he laughed, said all men had arrangements, and I was naive to expect otherwise. Jake's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. I broke the engagement. The scandal was enormous. A woman didn't refuse a man of his standing, not without consequences. My father disowned me. Society shunned me. I had nowhere to go but away. She managed a small smile. I thought I was running to nowhere. Turns out I was running home. His loss, Jake said simply. Philadelphia's too. Do you know what the funny thing is? If none of that had happened, I'd be married to him now, living in a gilded cage, hosting tea parties, dying slowly of respectability. She leaned against Jake's shoulder. Instead, I'm here, learning to shoot, fighting outlaws, cooking for cowboys, living, no regrets. Only one. At his questioning look, she smiled. I wish I'd learned to make better biscuits before taking this job. Jake's laughter echoed across the ranch, rich and full and alive. From the bunkhouse came answering laughter and music. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called to its mate. I love you, Jake said suddenly, as if the words surprised him. I should have said it sooner, but I love you too, Clara interrupted. Even if you did try to leave me behind during all the exciting parts. You'll have to get used to that. I'm old-fashioned about protecting what's mine. And I'm modern enough to protect what's mine right back, Clara countered. Better get used to that, cowboy. They sat in comfortable silence, planning without words. There would be a wedding simple, at the ranch, with their makeshift family around them. There would be children someday, God willing, to fill the too quiet house with laughter. There would be challenges, harsh winters, dry summers, the constant work of ranch life. But there would also be the sunset rides across their land, Tempest running free beside them, quiet evenings by the fire, Jake reading stock reports while Clara mended clothes, the satisfaction of building something lasting with their own hands, love that had grown from respect, partnership that had bloomed from adversity. We should go in, Clara said eventually. Early morning tomorrow. Every morning's early on a ranch. Jake quoted her own words back to her, making her laugh. As they stood, Tempest neighed one more time, a sound of contentment, of rightness, of home. You know, Clara said, I never did thank him properly for choosing me that first day. He's got good instincts, Jake agreed. Best horse I ever had. Knew a good woman when he saw one. Flatterer, but Clara smiled as she said it. Together, they walked into their house, leaving the vast Wyoming night to settle peacefully over the Circle S ranch. The battles were won, the enemies vanquished, the future secured. And, in his stall, a black stallion who had never bowed to anyone stood guard over the kingdom he'd helped create, content in the knowledge that all was finally as it should be. Spring came early to Wyoming that year, painting the prairie in shades of green and gold. The Circle S ranch bore little resemblance to the embattled fortress it had been 6 months ago. New fences stretched straight and strong. The barn had been expanded, and flower boxes adorned the windows of the main house, Clara's touch bringing softness to the harsh landscape. The morning of their wedding dawned clear and bright. Clara stood before the mirror in what had once been Margaret's room, now transformed with new curtains and fresh paint. Rosa fussed with the simple white dress they'd made together from fabric ordered from Denver. You look beautiful, mija, Rosa said, stepping back to admire her work. Jake won't know what hit him. I hope he recognizes me without trail dust and flour in my hair. Clara laughed, though her hands trembled slightly. He'd recognize you in a thunderstorm at midnight, Rosa assured her. That man's been waiting for you his whole life. He just didn't know it. Through the window, Clara could see the yard filling with people. Word had spread that Jake Sullivan was finally remarrying, and folks had come from 3 counties away. The same people who'd once whispered about the scandalous Eastern woman now brought wedding gifts and warm wishes. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Clara, it's Tom. Jake sent me to give you something. Rosa opened the door, taking a small box from the foreman. Inside, Clara found a silver locket on a delicate chain. She opened it to reveal 2 tiny photographs. One of Jake, stern-faced but with warmth in his eyes, and one of Tempest. He said to tell you. Tom cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the romantic message, that these are the 2 hearts you tamed, and they're yours forever. Clara blinked back tears, not wanting to ruin the rouge Rosa had carefully applied. Tell him I'll be right down. And Tom, thank you for everything. The ceremony took place in the meadow behind the house, where wildflowers bloomed in riotous color. Pedro played his guitar as Clara walked down the makeshift aisle, Billy and the other cowboys standing as impromptu groomsmen. But Clara had eyes only for Jake, who waited at the front in his best black suit, looking at her like she was the sunrise after the longest night of his life. Tempest stood in the nearest corral, his coat gleaming in the sun. Someone, probably Billy, had braided flowers into his mane. As Clara passed, the stallion bobbed his head and whinnied softly, as if giving his blessing. Judge Coleman, eager to make amends for his previous bias, performed the ceremony. His words about love conquering adversity and partnership surviving storms had special meaning for those who knew what the couple had faced. Do you, Clara Whitfield, take this man to be your husband, to stand beside him through drought and plenty, through calm and storm? I do, Clara said firmly, thinking of all the storms they'd already weathered. Do you, Jake Sullivan, take this woman to be your wife, to protect and cherish her, to share your life and land with her? I do. Jake's voice was rough with emotion. Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you husband and wife. Jake's kiss was tender but thorough, earning cheers from the cowboys and delicate applause from the town ladies, as they turned to face their community as a married couple. Clara felt the last ghost of her Philadelphia life fade away. She was Clara Sullivan now, rancher's wife, woman of the West. The celebration lasted well into the night. Tables groaned under the weight of food, Rosa's Mexican specialties alongside traditional American fare. Pedro's guitar was joined by a fiddle and harmonica, and couples danced on the packed earth of the yard. Never thought I'd see the day. Old Sam told anyone who'd listen. Jake Sullivan dancing and smiling like a fool in love. About time, too, Sheriff Watson added, raising his glass. Man needs a good woman to keep him honest. Clara danced with Jake, then with Tom, Billy, and each of the ranch hands in turn. But she always returned to Jake, drawn like a magnet to his steady presence. As the evening wound down, Jake led her away from the crowd to the corral where Tempest waited. The horse nuzzled them both, careful not to musk Clara's dress with his whiskers. Thank you, boy, Clara whispered, stroking his neck. For everything. He knows, Jake said softly. Look at him, proud as a matchmaker at his own success. They stood together, watching the last of the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. Behind them, the sounds of celebration continued, but here in their private moment, the world held only the three of them. Any regrets? Jake asked, echoing their conversation from months before. Only one, Clara said, making him tense until she smiled. I wish we'd met sooner. Think of all the time we wasted. Not wasted, Jake corrected. We became who we needed to be. You had to be strong enough to leave everything behind. I had to be ready to let someone in again. And Tempest, he chuckled. Well, he had to wait for the right woman to bow too. Your horse never bows to anyone, Clara quoted, remembering that first day. If he did it for you, then this is where you belong. Wise words, Jake agreed. Whoever said them must be a smart man. The smartest, Clara laughed. Also the luckiest. Later, after the guests had gone and the ranch had settled into nighttime quiet, Clara stood at the window of their bedroom, brushing out her hair. The room had been redecorated but still held echoes of the past, a reminder that love could bloom again even after loss. What are you thinking? Jake asked, coming up behind her to wrap his arms around her waist. About how far we've come. 6 months ago, I was a stranger stepping off a stagecoach, terrified and alone. Now, she gestured at the view, their land stretching out under the stars, the barn where Tempest slept, the bunkhouse where their extended family of cowboys snored and dreamed. Now you're home. Jake finished. We're home. Clara turned in his arms. I love you, Jake Sullivan, even if you do have the stubbornest horse in Wyoming. I love you too, Clara Sullivan, even if you do make terrible biscuits. They've improved, she protested, laughing. They have, he admitted. Everything's improved since you arrived. The food, the ranch, the company, me. We improved each other. Clara said, that's what partners do. From somewhere outside came Tempest's neigh, not alarmed or demanding, just a peaceful sound of a horse settling in for the night. It was answered by other horses, by the low of cattle, by all the sounds of a working ranch at rest. Listen to that, Jake murmured, the sound of everything being right. Clara smiled, resting her head against his chest where she could hear his heartbeat steady and strong as the man himself. Tell me something. Did you really think Tempest's reaction meant I belonged here that first day? Jake was quiet for a moment. I think I hoped. Margaret always said Tempest could see into people's hearts, know their true nature. When he bowed to you, it was like getting a message from her, that it was okay to love again, that you were the one. And were you right? What do you think, Mrs. Sullivan? Instead of answering with words, Clara kissed him a kiss full of promise and passion and the deep contentment of finding where you belong. Outside, the Wyoming night wrapped around the Circle S ranch like a blessing, while inside, two hearts that had traveled long, hard roads to find each other finally rested in the peace of home. The next morning would bring work it always did on a ranch. There would be cattle to tend, meals to cook, fences to mend. There would be challenges, 2 harsh winters, dry summers, the occasional threat from those who envied their happiness. But there would also be love, laughter, and the deep satisfaction of building something lasting together. And through it all, a black stallion would stand guard the horse who never bowed to anyone except the woman who belonged. His instincts had been true from that first moment in Cedar Ridge. He had known what Jake and Clara would take months to discover, that home isn't just a place, but the people who stand beside you when the storms come. The Circle S ranch had survived threats from without and sorrow from within. Now, with new love blooming where grief once dwelt, it would thrive. The woman from the east and the cowboy from the west had found in each other what neither had dared hope for: a second chance at happiness, a partner for the trail ahead, and a love as vast and enduring as the prairie sky. In the barn, Tempest settled into his stall with a contented sigh. His work here was done. The rest, the living, the loving, the building of a life together that was up to them. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. Where are you enjoying this tale from? Please subscribe to From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what touched your heart in Jake and Clara's journey.